What about buy now, pay later? Because it wouldn't be a podcast episode without mentioning buy now, pay later. Temptation. I mean, you can pretty much buy now, pay later anything, even a round of drinks at the Burley Pavilion.
It's just a hard no.
Hard no. I agree.
I mean, temptation is exactly what that business is orientated around, and you're caught in the moment, bang, and it's something that you end up having to deal with down the line. You probably forgot what half of it was that you bought. So, as we've covered, as you say, multiple times, it's just a hard no. Full stop. It is in my opinion, a predatory, parasitic business. It has no business being around. It needs to be regulated and squeezed out.
Totally. And I think with credit cards and buy now, pay later, over Christmas, don't buy things you can't afford.
No.
Is the advice. Simple, right? Set a budget, make sure you've got the cash to afford it, and then go out and buy it.
Hey guys, welcome to this week's Money Investing Show. This week we are looking at Christmas. It's almost upon us. What can you do to ensure that financially you stay on track? More importantly, that you budget and set yourself up for the start to the new year that you deserve. It doesn't have to be all dull though, because we're also going to talk about some indulgences and things that you can do to enjoy the festive season too. As always, make sure you take plenty of notes, but most importantly, make sure you take plenty of action. Hey guys, welcome to this week's Money and Investing Show with me, your host, Andrew Baxter, and as always, my offsider and co-host, Mitch Olarenshaw.
Looking tan, Mr. B. Must be closer to the holiday season, so let's do a podcast on that, shall we?
Why not? Nice and tan. I was outside in the fresh air doing some work on the farm at the weekend.
Me too, funnily enough. Great minds think alike. In any case, parking that to the side, today's topic of conversation, we're going to talk about holiday spending, saving, and budgeting, making sure that you do have some fun over this Christmas, but making sure you don't go overboard either, which is a common pitfall we see a lot of people fall into.
Look, it's a very difficult time for a lot of people through this Christmas period, particularly with the cost of living crisis we're enduring right now. So for some, it's going to be a belt tightening Christmas, and others think, oh, it's Christmas, it happens once a year, let's make the best of it. And the decisions you make through this time frame can have a material difference on what next year really looks like for you, both financially but also emotionally too.
If we just start off with some stats to give people some context. So the average Australian accrues an additional, not just a total, but an additional $1,700 over that Christmas New Year period. The average person also spends around $1,400 just on Christmas presents alone, which is up about 9% from 2022.
Okay, I mean, they're big numbers. They're big numbers to have to squeeze into what for some people will be an already stretched budget.
Absolutely.
What's interesting, I reckon if you break those numbers back, so what do you say, it's up 9% since 22?
Yeah, 1,400, it's up 9% from 2 years ago on Christmas presents.
Okay, so I'd be interested to see what that looks like when you take out inflation, because that number's probably gone up because of inflation.
Yeah.
So last year, what was inflation? 6.9% for 23. It's probably been an average about 3.5 this year. So there's 12.5 plus what was 22 would have been about 5. So there's about 17% inflation over those, roughly speaking. I'm sure someone's going to check the numbers and fact check if we use that term.
Comment below if you have. Thank you.
So there's about maybe 17% is what inflation would have been in cumulatively over that period of time. So I reckon you find, even though the number's bigger, relatively speaking, it's less than what people were spending.
Well, it makes sense. Cost of living crisis, quantitative tightening, interest rates higher.
Can only put the money in so many places. If you've got a mortgage or higher rent plus everything else, then sure.
The scary thing is it's an extra $1,700 just on average in credit card debt over that time frame. So let's get stuck in regards to making sure we don't fall foul of those mistakes. So step number one, have a budget, plan it out, right?
You've got to do that. We're huge advocates of budgeting, knowing where your money is going, and there's an enormous amount of social pressure, I think, on people in today's world, especially with social media. Sound like an old fogey having this conversation, but people have so much pressure put on them against a peer group or against their network on social media to be seen to be doing well. And if you try and keep up with that, you could easily bust that budget badly. So I go back to the lens I typically look through. Do you need it or do you want it? Same with the kids. And it's so easy to want to give your kids everything you can, but there's a cumulative knock-on effect of that over a period of time in terms of other things you could do with that money. If you spent $1,000 more than you needed to over Christmas, well, that $1,000 invested, we've seen the NASDAQ put on, a solid 40% plus this year, I should think. That money could have grown, by another big chunk for you and continue to do that going forward. So I think you've got to make some tough decisions. And I mean, I'm a father to 5 children. My wife and I have got 5 beautiful kids. And
gee, Santa has a big job
Santa's
there for
busy.
you guys.
He's got a bit of work to do. He's usually got the asthma puffer out by the time he's finished dropping everything off at our
You feed him well, I hope.
We do. He does get fed well. And, the reality of all of that is that it can become like a really substantial outlay.
Oh yeah.
And some of the things to consider, let's just take something really simple. If your kids are growing up, they need a bike, do you get them a new bike or do you get them a second-hand one?
Depends on what kind of position you're in. Depends what their activities are.
Yeah, so we've got a sort of hierarchical system where we've got a pass-down process. So whatever's been used has gone down through the ranks, so to speak.
Your poor son in the middle there, he's got all the Barbie dolls to play with in the world.
He's good. He's in pretty good order because he's the only boy. So
It's all dad stuff.
He doesn't necessarily get the hand-downs. And of course they get new stuff too. But I'm just saying that as a process, as a parent, is one thing that you certainly can do. I know that's exactly what my parents did with me. So I've got a new bike. It's new to me. It doesn't have to be brand new. It can be just new to you. And that's sometimes a way that you might better cut out some costs in what you're doing. And also, I mean, we live in such a materialistic world, and kids at school these days, we talked about parents being under social media pressure or peer group pressure. It's the same at school as well with people that, what did you get? I got a phone. Well, why are you like 9 or 10 years old? You don't need a phone. And so trying to keep your kids' feet on the ground and learn some value around that, I think is really important. At the same time, you don't want to be Scrooge. It's a really difficult balancing act.
Well, if I can speak to the younger demographic listening today, AB, I think the challenge for us is, as you say, a lot of social pressure, especially with social media, to be out and about all the time, eating, drinking, partying, doing whatever. I think that stuff is all fun, particularly when you're on Christmas break. You've got the time off. You should utilize it and have some fun. A piece of advice I would give to anyone who's, 20s, 30s in that space is set an amount that you would like to spend over your Christmas period. So let's say you've got a week off work or 2 weeks or 5 days, whatever it is, and stick to that amount. Whatever is within that amount that you want to spend it on, be it, partying or food, presents, whatever it is, you can. I always set myself a Christmas bonus, and that's what I spend for the period of time that our office is closed. I know that realistically speaking, I'm pretty much going to eat out breakfast, lunch and dinner for 3 weeks. So I have to make sure that it's fulsome enough, which is, a common pitfall as well. Make sure that if you are going to have a budget, make sure it's realistic. You're going to be out and about doing stuff.
Look, that's true too. And I mean, there are a lot of things that you can do. Like, I remember like early on in my career, when I was in London, I'd like, you'd scab an invite to as many Christmas parties as you could, because one less dinner you got to have at home that you got to pay for. And I just bought a house and how many money. I'm trying to save as much as I could. So if there was a broker, I'm there. Went, done. What time? And one at lunchtime, one at night, as much as you can. So if you get invited to functions like that, feel free to take advantage of it too, especially if it's in the business framework. But that notion of going also back to what Christmas is all about, we do live in an incredibly materialistic world, and I think sort of taking some time out to actually understand what Christmas is all about. So I've got my kids doing a clear out at home at the moment of a heap of toys that aren't going into the hand-me-down sort of situation, and actually going to go and do a run through to a couple of charities and make sure that they've got plenty of gifts for people that will enjoy them and utilize them fully as well. And that's a nice thing to do, because I think it grounds your kids, and it does take a little bit of pressure off, where they realize that there are people that are far less fortunate than themselves. And again, this isn't about living in a very frugal way. I don't live that way. I don't have to live that way. I have done in my past. I want my kids to have opportunities, but I don't want them to be spoiled. And it's a really difficult juxtaposition as a parent. You don't want to be that parent that was the odd one out that said no, but sometimes it takes a lot of strength to be the outlier rather than the person that just falls into line and does what everybody else does too.
Totally.
So yeah, it's a really interesting one. I think one of the other things, as you say, set yourself a budget and stick with it. And there are so many things that you can do in terms of tips and tricks for not going over budget, because there's so much stuff you can do that's free. Go to the beach. The weather's great. Have a swim. Doesn't cost anything to do that. And if you've eaten a bit out of your budget with some of the activities or buying that you've been doing, go to the beach, have a couple of days there, enjoy the weather.
Pro tip as well, if you are going to have a budget, you could even break it down. So let's say travel, food, entertainment, miscellaneous expenses, have an amount that sits within that. And if you're going to be off work for a week or two, make sure that you stick within each category, within each budget.
Absolutely. We typically don't travel over Christmas. All our family are up here. My father arrives from the UK before Christmas, and so all of my family will be here. So there's no requirement to head anywhere, and that's not a bad thing either, because traveling at Christmas can be particularly expensive, particularly if you're looking to go overseas. And so maybe if that's the life that you are, let's say you're an expat like me, and you intend to go home for Christmas, look for those red deals, for example, earlier in the year, so you can book your airfares when they're relatively cheap. If you know you're doing that next year, it's going to save you some money. ultimately a saving is as good as a profit at the end of the day. You get to travel and you haven't spent as much to do that, or use points, or whatever the system might be that enables you to save a little bit of cash there.
Gotcha.
So we don't typically travel around much. We've got everything we need at home. Everyone comes to us usually. It's just easier given the volume of moving parts in my house.
And the space you've got out there
and
too.
the space that we've got too, I suppose. So it makes it pretty interesting. Do go camping though. That's always one of the
nice.
better weeks of the year. So we head off camping, which again is something that is affordable for people.
Gotcha.
And is a way that you can do stuff and you get away, but in a different
Totally.
way. And again, my wife and I, as we were both kids, used to camp a lot, and I think it's a tradition that we have, and it's one that we've been able to continue on, so our kids can enjoy that too, which again is, I think, a great thing to do.
Nice. Okay. Secondly on this list, AB, we need to talk about avoiding the Christmas traps, because there are a few out there.
Yep.
We just go through a couple now. Using your credit card and overspending. Very easy to do.
Absolutely. Retail therapy, you can really get stuck into things, Boxing Day sales, for example, and I've never really got my head around why you'd want to spend hours in traffic to go and buy stuff at a shop. I hate going to this.
Black Friday is much better, to be honest.
Yeah,
Getting early.
yeah. So try and avoid that one. What are you going to do? Buy a heap of stuff you don't really need or want anyway? Or if it is something that you want, then that's great. You've been saving up for it. It's in your budget, and you happen to be buying it at a discount. That actually does make sense. But make sure it's something you actually want and that you've been planning for, as opposed to an impulse purchase. Impulse stuff, never ever a good idea. Geez, I really sound like I'm a Scrooge, and I'm not. I'm such a generous person. Yet I'm talking about all these different ways of avoiding wasting money.
Well, you have a generosity budget, right?
Yeah.
I do too. So if I'm at the shops and I see something I like for my partner, well, it's in the generosity budget, right?
How does a generosity budget work? Just remind me. That sounded quite good.
So the generosity budget is the second budget that comes with your own budget, and the generosity budget is for spur of the moments where you want to look after other people.
Gotcha. I like that.
Yeah, I have it.
I like that. I might get some tips from you on that. That's a pretty good idea.
Just don't tell your wife about it. That's what you need to do.
No, I think she's already fast tracked that one on for sure. But yeah, it is a really interesting one. You can get carried away with this. You just got to be sensible at the end of the day. And look, you've got to live life. Let's face it. We all work hard, and we're on this planet for a very, very short period of time. And I think sometimes retail can try and fill a void in your soul that's not there. You got to work out what makes you happy.
Totally. What about hidden costs? Because it's not just the presents, it's the wrapping paper, it's the cards that come with it, it's everything, the Christmas tree, the decorations for the Christmas tree. It all adds up. And I think many people forget that if their budget is X amount of dollars on presents, not to leave out the hidden costs and go over your budget, right?
Well, that's right. I mean, I know I'm very fortunate. I get to buy one present a year now, which my wife does an amazing job of looking after everything. So I've just got to get hers, which is definitely in the generosity column as
Generosity
well.
budget.
And given the work that she does running our household and our family, she deserves every bit of it. I think they are things that you lose track of, and I think there are a lot of charities that do, for example, Christmas wrapping. You see, like I've seen it multiple times at various shopping centres where they've had a gift wrapping service, and that's a way where you potentially can be doing some good with an outlay that you're going to spend too. And that's not a bad thing to do, because that's a win-win for everyone. You get your presents wrapped, and if you're anything like me when it comes to wrapping presents, hopeless at it too. Hopeless. So if it's done professionally, it looks great, and if it's a charity, even better, because they've made some money for a really great cause doing that too. And that's certainly something to look at. But there are huge hidden costs that people miss there. Something else on that is make sure you keep all your receipts and warranties and things like that, so that if something doesn't work or you need to change your mind, you can at least get the ability to switch that out too. And it's so easy. We'll just toss that. Keep it. You never know. It's always good to have.
Talking to business owners specifically now, AB, a lot of people might be in the situation where their office or their business has to close down for a period of time.
Yep.
And that can really crimp cash flow for a period. So what would you suggest as a business owner in that situation?
I think if you've got the ability to smooth cash flow through, and a large chunk of our bottom line is relatively steady each month, but obviously there are seasonal variations in there too. So I think if you've got the ability to run a campaign in the run-up before Christmas as a business, that's not a bad thing. We've discussed that to help out certain members of our team, so that their income check through January, if they're in a commission situation, for example, is plumped up by a strategically timed campaign to help them through there. So there are lots of things that you can do like that, and looking at those sort of flat spots on the calendar. It doesn't just have to be Christmas. There are other seasonal areas within the year that you can sort of plot out, and it does require a level of planning there. And that's like everything in life. You've got to plan if you want things to run smoothly. It doesn't happen by accident, that's for sure.
What about buy now, pay later? Because it wouldn't be a podcast episode without mentioning buy now, pay later. Temptation. I mean, you can pretty much buy now, pay later anything, even a round of drinks at the Burleigh Pavilion.
It's just a hard no.
Hard no. I agree.
I mean, temptation is exactly what that business is orientated around, and you're caught in the moment, bang, and it's something that you end up having to deal with down the line. You probably forgot what half of it was that you bought. So, as we've covered, as you say, multiple times, it's just a hard no. Full stop. It is in my opinion, a predatory, parasitic business. It has no business being around. Needs to be regulated and squeezed out.
Totally. And I think with credit cards and buy now, pay later, over Christmas, don't buy things you can't afford.
No.
Is the advice. Simple, right? Set a budget, make sure you've got the cash to afford it, and then go out and buy it.
Yeah, it's crucial. Cash flow management. Cash flow is like oxygen. Without it, you're dead. And you see that sort of flat spot sort of when the kids go back to school at the end of January, and that credit card's just hit the mat at the front door, and you're going to pick it up, and it's like, oh, this one's going to be pretty nasty. And that's a very, very heavy burden psychologically to take into the year, because most people start the new year with New Year's resolutions, with a fresh set of goals. This is going to be my year. In fact, we run a number of workshops to help our clients be focused on their goal setting and what their financial drivers are going to be for the year. And just when you're starting to build that momentum up, you get slugged with a rather punchy credit card bill, and that's the spare cash that you're going to start doing something with. It really is a setback. And so I think a little bit of discipline through the Christmas period, not again to deny people having any level of colour, but to deny that delayed bomb that's going to go off January, February when that credit card comes in and then totally derails your mindset for 25 being the financial year that you truly deserved.
I want to set a challenge, AB, to you and I and our listeners out there. And I've just come up with this on the spot, no pre-planning. So we're talking about Christmas budgeting and having some colour in our lives right now. Yeah. We're also talking about New Year's and new goals. So what about we set a challenge for our listeners when they dial into our New Year podcast, which will come out around about the new year. We always do it every year, goals and all that kind of thing. Is that if our listeners can set themselves some really, really audacious goals in that podcast as a result of listening to us, and then next time around we come to this episode in a year's time, if they've hit those goals, they can then spruce themselves up with a bit of colour next Christmas.
I like the idea of that, and it's a delayed gratification, so it ticks a massive box in terms of wealth building. It's crucial. Commit to it. Commit to it is the key thing, and it is a difficult environment out there right now. We all know that. The cost of living has been brutal, and there are so many things that you can do to keep yourself moving forward and having a good quality of life, where you do feel that you're rewarded without financially crippling yourself with some peer pressured or naive decisions, if you will, that set you back. Here's a good one: Christmas shopping. So, as you know, every Saturday I take 2 of my kids to Aldi.
I have heard this rumor before, actually.
And if you ask my kids, I reckon it's usually Bella and Jack that come with me for this one. So that's the Jack being the second eldest and then the middle one. And they'll tell you it's probably one of the highlights of the weekend, right? That much tells you everything about our life if going to Aldi is the highlight. And we have a heap of fun with it because you can look around and it's great to show kids that you can still get an outcome but for less by looking through a slightly different lens. And this is a father, it's something that's really important to me. And we talk in the book, for example, about money stories, and we inherit views around money largely from our parents. And so, it's important. My kids are likely to inherit, a pretty substantial amount of money. And I don't want to stop them from having their run in life, their goals, their success pathway, their aspirations and ambitions by spoiling them, going, here's a blob of cash and off you go, without them understanding the value of money and how distinct, discernible decisions that you can make in a moment can really move that along. So we did our usual Saturday hit out a week or 2 ago, and they had a lot of the Christmas fair there. And my son is great with numbers. I'm not sure where he's got that from, but we'll assume that the acorn doesn't fall far from the tree there. And he's going and he had a magazine from another shop, and he's comparing all this stuff. He's going, this is so much cheaper. Why is that?
Really?
Yeah. It's crackers. The granular detail that he's gone into understanding how saving money, and he is really good. He's the most generous kid. He genuinely is. He gives everything he's got away. He's a really, really generous kid. but he's also working on how to build that to give it away. And I don't think he knows he's doing that, but subconsciously is. So
you've trained him well.
Give you a really simple example. The other week, like tomatoes were like $4.95 for a box of tomatoes. Fair enough. And now we obviously have a farm, and I love gardening and planting stuff out there. So we planted a heap of tomatoes. And he's like, Dad, how many kilos of tomatoes do you reckon you get off a plant? And I said, probably about 4 kilos if you look after the plant. Nice big, heirloom tomatoes. He said, okay, that's $5 a kilo. So that's $20 of tomatoes on a plant. It's like, yeah. And he's like, how much was the plant? Like the seedling, and we grow everything from seedlings because we've got a farm. It's like 30 cents. And he's like, that's like a 700 times return on investment. And it's like, yeah, it is. He said, why doesn't everybody do that? And it's just, you could just see the penny going off there. And it's the same thing now when he's seeing stuff that you could buy at one of the other 2 supermarkets that perhaps have been a little less charitable to their customers versus, again, shopping out. It's the same thing, and it's much cheaper. Why is it cheaper? And I've explained to him about buying power, and we could do a podcast on Aldi and Lidl and why they're so successful as a business.
He might be replacing me soon.
We might get him on here.
Jack.
He's a good-looking rooster, so he'd fit the bill well. Again, the acorn doesn't fall far from the tree.
That's right.
And at the end of the day, that value, like he's looking at that now, and he's going like, okay, so their turkey is X for frozen turkey here, and that one is Y. Why is it different? Why is this one cheaper? And it's like, well, Jack, this company is a European business. So they've got about 1 billion customers in Europe. This is a great plug for Aldi, isn't it? I just realised that. Maybe we should be getting a discount.
Yeah, we should be, yeah.
They've got a buying power of 1 billion customers. So when they buy stuff, they're able to organise really good pricing. These guys over here, just in Australia, they've got 26 million customers. So their buying power is not there. And so, and there are other reasons behind it too, as everyone knows. And he said, but it's the same thing. And I said, yeah, that's right. He said, so why isn't everyone here? Really interesting observation.
It is.
And he's even starting to quote me things like, a savings as good as a profit now, Dad. Like, it's like, oh, come on, son. But that mindset is going to be something as a value system, as a parent, that I've been able to layer into there. And don't worry, they get plenty of colour too, in terms of the things that they do in life. But I think that value of understanding that when you're running a household, if you've got the ability to generate a saving there, you can spend that money elsewhere. So we've got our tomatoes, and he's worked out what his yield's going to be on that. He also is quite the entrepreneur with his egg business too, so he's got his money coming from that.
Yep.
And he's going, okay, this is great. And I said, what are you going to do with it? He said, I thought what I could do is, I don't want to tell you what the specific thing is, but I was thinking maybe I could get this for everybody for Christmas, for his siblings.
Oh, wow.
It's just like,
that's beautiful.
That's from an 8-year-old.
Nice.
And that's a great little value play, because what he's done is worked on being able to get the same outcome by buying something, but at a lower price, and then redeploying that money elsewhere. I guess the takeaway, not to understand the dynamics of my family and what we do, is that as somebody consuming this podcast, the net effect of consuming something, if you can do it in a more affordable or smarter way, the surplus cash flow that you save from that, you can do other things, which primarily should be going into your investment account or getting your debt down. And those small decisions that you can make, and they look like nothing decisions in the heat of the moment. Buy a box of Jats crackers and they're 50 cents cheaper, big deal. But if that's every week and there's 2 boxes, that's X. And if it goes into that and everything accumulates that way, and you've got an extra 3, 5, 8 grand, or whatever it might be at the end of the year because of some of those decisions that you've made. And you're then able to get that money working harder. This notion of giving yourself some splurge excitement money over Christmas becomes a reality, because you've got your debt down, and you've demonstrated world-class basics in how to run your household or how to run your life. You've got all the utility and the benefit, and you've got spare cash at the end of it, which is what you can do if you take on board some of the things that we've talked of here.
That's right.
Probably gone down a few little avenues with this.
That's all right.
I wasn't expecting us to talk about, but it's the real world that we live in, and the decisions we make today shape everything that we do going forward. And I'd love, as you said, for our people that are consuming this to set some really firm goals on this, and then roll it through the year to see where we get to the next year.
Absolutely. AB, thank you very much for today.
My pleasure, anytime, man. There you have it, guys. Make sure to like, comment, subscribe. Most importantly, hit the notification button, and we'll look forward to hosting you next week.